Okay, we're here at in Petroglyph National Monument in Albuquerque, New Mexico, at the Boca Negra Canyon section. It's a very large area. Lots of petroglyphs here. We're going to see if there's any thunderbirdy kind of rock drawings here. Traveling with Jordan Rogers and Sharon Moore, formerly Sharon Moore, who we've spoken with before, and see if they pick up any psychic signals here.
I think that's a rattlesnake home.
Square.
All snakes have that home. So I'm not going back. Oh, that's the biggest petroglyph ever. We walked past that. Oh, Daddy, we walked. There's somebody living in this volcano.
Has the male member on it too down there.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Let's go. That sounds good. Had to test. You want to see him?
No. Jordan Rogers will now ask me some question. I have no idea what we're going to talk about, but let's go.
I was wondering if, well, if you believe there's a possibility of a murderous, enlightened person, you know. I know that sounds insane, but no. If we're gonna say that, there's a certain projection of a human ego, and through that the universe is watching. You know, the universe is what's moving around. It's just whatever shape or size or whatever. Let's say the natural construction of this person is predatory. You know, they just naturally prey on other people, and then they become enlightened because they recognize the fact that the universe is looking through them, and they just open up to it. But their personality still holds true, and so they blissfully go about their violent business. You know, rough and tough cowboys, snipers, or just a serial killer. Could they still be fully conscious and fully aware, just like any Buddha, and are still just fulfilling their karma?
Well, that last thing you said is accurate. They're fulfilling their karma.
Could karma be like that in an enlightened creature?
By definition, an enlightened creature would fall. That person would fall out of the category.
By definition?
Probably. For most Buddhists, yeah.
Well, I just wonder about that.
But I will say that there was a great bad guy just like that in Buddhist history, Angulimala, who wore a necklace of fingers around of human fingers around his neck. He was ruthless, and then he became a great Buddhist master because he spoke to the right guy, the right guru, who said the right thing to him that totally changed it.
So he didn't continue being violent or murderous.
Right.
So I guess what I was asking is that so fundamentally part of some personality constructs that even that lasts for a while after full enlightenment has been achieved?
What lasts for a while?
That impulse, personality impulse.
The impulse might arise, yes. But by definition, an enlightened person would cut it off before it went anywhere.
They would recognize it but not act on it.
Right. Because all these are arisings. Almost everything we've talked about tonight, it's a discussion of what to do with an arising, and the answer is always the same. You become aware of it and let it go.
You recognize what's happening.
And then you're there.
Okay.
And so there's no guilt involved.
I just thought that'd
an
be
arising.
interesting.
All these impulses are like that, so there's no guilt.
All right.
There's only guilt when
That'd just be a
you
great
know
character.
that you are clinging to one. That's when guilt starts. More or less.
Okay, so
Yeah,
samurai,
makes
you know, their code of Bushido or whatever, they're acting as these types of people. If they became enlightened, they would probably no longer live by the sword. They wouldn't see the necessity for that. Even in protecting other people, they wouldn't do that because
No, some did.
they still live by the sword, even though they were enlightened.
There were some that did, and then that's always a question that comes up in advanced Buddhist classes. Well, what about those monks who fought the Chinese
So they
and
killed
died?
them.
And the answer is that was their role.
That's what I mean.
And
so,
yeah, I think you're right. So I think there's an element of what you're saying. Yes.
So could there be predatory roles? They're probably much,
Well, I wouldn't say
much
it was-
rarer.
I wouldn't
than-
say it was predatory in their case. They were just apparently apparently they just felt like it was better. It was in defense or whatever.
It was
And
a cause
so
worth fighting for.
So they were like Jedi, basically.
yeah, it wasn't predatory. It was.
They were like Jedi more than monks. Yeah. Okay.
That's
Yeah,
what I
we should
wanted,
make
was
it a middle
Moss
name,
Rogers,
but
but
we'll have
it
to
would have
change the name
taken
again.
extra
Sharon
stuff.
Rogers, we're back with her. Here we go. A penny just fell.
No, the penny didn't fall. It appeared on the floor. It wasn't there. I just got up and it came over here and it wasn't there. Or I got up, it wasn't there. I came back and I looked down and it was. I didn't hear anything fall. That's why I asked you guys.
Well, Eugenia Maester Story is going to be interested in hearing this one.
But if someone's going to grace
She's
us
in,
with money,
she's in there.
if someone's
She's
going to grace
all
us with
about
money, they
these
should do more
things.
than
I've been told many times that spirits and sprites will leave tokens of things behind, so that just as letting you know that they're there. Also, deceased spirits that are in the house will a lot of times leave money laying around the house. It's just something they do.
Can you talk about the mounds? Because earlier we were talking about it, and you said something that about their shape and how they
Well-
hold spirits.
Okay, a burial mound is a sacred ground. It's holy ground, which means, you know, a lot of rituals have gone on there, a lot of intention towards the sacredness of the spot. And a lot of times I think that people are drawn to sacred spots, they're not made. The sacred spot already exists. There's something different about the energy there that actually draws people there and inspires awe in people. And so it's kind of a natural reaction to the energy. The energy's there, and then people build churches, temples, holy places. But one thing I thought was interesting about the mounds is just the shape of the circle. In witchcraft, when you cast a circle, it becomes your sacred space. And the circle is a completely closed symbol. And it holds in the energy that you build while you're working your magic. And so through chanting and dance or whatever thing you decide to do to work up this energy, the circle encapsulates it and holds it until you're ready through your force and your intent to send it somewhere, or towards a certain person to heal, or to just whatever you want to do. But I think the circle is like an eternal kind of something in the geometry of it. It's an eternal, it's just a sacred shape. Anything else?
Now, the interesting thing, well, at the top of the dome, at the TNT area, they have a hole.
Right, that would be where they would project the energy up through the circle. We're talking about the mound and the hole at the top. You want
Yeah.
to about the mass? Is that what you're gonna?
Yeah, Dylan, you and this reminded me of something you said earlier about the natives burying their dead and putting ceramic bowls on their heads with holes in them, and then there would be layers of them, symbolizing, I guess, moving through dimensions as your spirit leaves your body, and you know, thus, and that might be even involved with mounds. So if you had both, maybe the bowls
Even the
and the mound.
pyramids had the hole at the top that was going to send them out.
Was that? Can you talk a little bit about that? Where you what tribe that was, or just your general thoughts on it? Because you've got some good thoughts about all this.
Well, I had been trying to remember the name of the tribe, but it's not coming to me at the moment. What they believed is the ceramic bowl, the shape of the bowl, symbolized the sky, in a sense, and they originally had, or believed they had come out of 4 different worlds, basically. They had come through holes, climbed with 4 different tree trunks up to different worlds, and now they're in this one. They would climb through a sipapu, so the natives would bury their dead in a fetal position with those ceramic bowls over their head, and they would punch holes in them as the sipapu in order to allow for that person's soul to travel in between the dimensions, not be stuck in the one that they died in. Something interesting about it is that they would only put ceramic bowls with figurative paintings on them over children under the age of 4 and shaman. All the others got geometric shapes, and that was the only way they did it.
Why do you think that?
I'm not sure. I don't know. Some of them had figurative, so they had like depictions of people. Sometimes people they had these characters. They were twins. They were like powerful, and they would fight particular things, this and that. They were the warrior twins, I think. And those figures would be on the bowls, and they would only, I guess, associate them with children because they were considered holy in some sense. I know that. I'm not sure.
You ready, Jordan?
Yeah.
Sure.
What was that thought you were holding?
It was a rebuttal to our conversation earlier. It's I don't know if this is a definition for wrathful deities, but I could guess that
You want me to film you two's rebuttal?
wrathful deities. I could guess that wrathful deities are, enlightened, individualized beings that are violent and murderous.
Or
They might not be as ego-based as us, but they still seem to be the violent side.
I would describe that as the tip of a waveform of a dynamic.
But would you not also describe us as the tip
periodically
of a waveform?
happens, maybe. I don't think it.
It doesn't sustain for too long. It's not a pattern.
I mean,
that
there are some who would say that they just flat out were out of the Enlightenment group at that moment. I mean, there is a controversy in the Buddhist world about that.
Oh, really? The wrathful deities?
No, about whether or not those monks were enlightened when they.
Oh, but I'm saying wrathful deities, not even human forms in any way.
Yeah.
But is a wrathful deity a being, an individualized being that has the full awareness flowing through it, but it demonstrates violence to the physical form to break the ego?
Well, every sentient being has that going for it. That it is.
So that is
in the concept of unity. It is.
That's a very real actualization of the universe. So therefore, individuals who have the universe just flowing through them, full faucet force, might have violent tendencies occasionally because that's what the universe saw fit.
Yeah, yeah.
Booyah.
Could
This
it be
kid,
your
dude, I'm
karma to actually be the wrecking ball that that breaks certain situations or people down? So that it busts their ego or causes a crack so that they actually can become aware of something other than their ego or from the perspective of the ego.
Yeah, gurus are known to say the right thing, so that the
Because
person.
Jordan calls me wrecking ball, but I think sometimes
Or
that's
yeah,
necessary.
yeah.
But I thought that wrathful deities were just one aspect of your consciousness, that if the peaceful doesn't work, then the wrathful comes in to try to do it that way. Isn't that the way it works? Don't the peaceful, isn't that what you're, that what you face
Peace is
first?
a concept, wrath is a concept.
if you can't break down by peaceful manner,
Well,
if you can't
at the moment you're
realize
feeling
it,
peaceful, you need to be aware of
then the wrathful
that
demons come.
No, you're aware of peacefulness, and when the other arises, you're aware of that, and then by each time that you're aware of it, it dissolves back into its own nature. So you're like a fountain, and these arisings are coming up, and your only job is just to destroy each one as it comes up.
Okay.
So then your head's almost disconnected from your body, and you're like, oh, or it's a bad analogy because it implies
You're watching
separation.
what you're doing from outside yourself. Kind of, but not really. From a greater distance than.
Yes, there's an additional platform from which you're viewing.
Yeah, you're viewing
additional
yourself
one.
inside yourself.
And then there's another platform behind that one, apparently.
Yeah, I think there has to be. There has to be.
Yeah. Could you talk about your Waffle House experience?
Oh yeah. When I was telling it to you, this most recent time, I'm realizing that the details are leaving me. Unfortunately, it's just I can't. I'm trying to describe it from within this construct, and it's just really hard to do, and it seems more difficult all the time. Anyway, so
But you had it sounds a lot like Bill Bryant's experience, where he just experiences infinity for a period of time.
it didn't feel that big. It didn't feel like infinity.
Oh, because it kind of went to a point, right? It was like
It's almost like
you were inside a bubble. Okay, well that's
Yeah. But yeah.
a guru-like activity because they're known to encase themselves in spheres of energy and travel.
Okay.
So that's immediately what I thought of. Or you could think of the witch, the Good Witch in Wizard of Oz.
Oh yeah, sure.
So that's a good. It sounds like an excellent experience. That it was one that your consciousnly needed to have.
No, it felt awesome.
And what I remember saying when you told me was that the Garuda is considered to be a stabilizer of those moments. So you can use the symbolisms that you find around the Garuda to help stabilize those states.
Oh.
That's what Beltime's saying
Right.
in this interview.
Yeah. Well, I don't know anything personally about
Okay.
that. I mean, that's a new concept to me, but I don't doubt it. But I could talk about the Waffle House thing if you want me to. I mean, I didn't really say anything about it. I just kind of avoided it.
That's fine. I wanted to ask while you can, think about whether or not you want to continue with it in a minute. And,
No, I'd love to.
okay. Okay.
The more benign one first.
You recently had an experience.
I recently, we have a little cheap flute, or wind flute, I guess you'd say, real simple. And I was playing it. I can't play it, but I was playing with it not long after we moved here. And the cat, Cedric, was totally interested in it, just entranced with it, and even though I was making horrible sounds. Well, that night, I had a dream that I was playing the flute, and it was beautiful, of course, then. And I was walking through a town at night, and these children came out from these villages, kind of ragamuffin type children, real native. And they were following me. They were attracted to the music I was playing. The next day, I was playing the flute again, and Cedric was still, loving it. Well, that night, I don't know if I fell asleep on the couch or if I just came out later, but I was asleep on the couch and something felt amiss in the room. Not menacing, but just something was going on. I woke up. I totally woke up, and I looked towards the door, and there were two children there. They were Indian. They had the straight black hair, dark skin, but they also had a greenish hue to them, and their teeth were strangely long. I don't know how to explain it other than the mouth. If the mouth was like this, teeth went from here to, it was like a space that seemed about that tall. Just long teeth. Wide, long teeth. Not like sharp teeth. Well, they looked at me, and they were like I caught them, and then they shot through the wall. It just kind of jumped through the wall. But I see things similar to that all the time, unfortunately. And this was right after we moved in, and usually when I stay somewhere strange or I move somewhere and I haven't really cleansed the house yet, those things will happen. It's kind of like an initiation usually when I go to a new place. Now with my mom and her house, I'd never stayed there before all night. And I really didn't have anything in my mind. I didn't, you know, when Ariane and I laid down, I wasn't like thinking, oh, this house is haunted, you know, something's going to happen. Nothing like that. She fell asleep quickly, but I just couldn't fall asleep. Just something was gnawing at me. It was kind of that feeling where something's, you know, brewing. And I never fell asleep. But I was laying on my stomach like this. I was laying at the foot of the bed, she was up here. And there's a long hallway going to my mom's kitchen from right at the edge of the bed. I could see it. Well, I kind of had a pile of covers right in front of me, and I couldn't see all the way in the kitchen. I could just see like the upper part of the hallway. Well, I was laying there, and just something suddenly felt so wrong. And it still kind of chokes me up talking about it. But this is the only thing I think I've ever seen that scared me. But I just felt something was there, and I raised my head up slowly over the covers, and at the end of the hallway the kitchen light was on too, so I saw it very well. It was a woman. Looked like she might have been about Spring's build. Not real, you know, not super short, but slight, you know, not heavy, just a slender woman. She had long brown hair that came down just below her chest. She had on a red, very vibrant red, looked heavy like a sweatshirt. And she had a blue jean skirt that was kind of short. It was just above the knee. And it kind of looked patchworky, like it had pieces of blue jean. And she looked completely solid. I mean, like the children I saw and the things I see like that usually have a see-through appearance. They don't look totally solid, but enough that I can make out, you know, certain details. But this woman looked just like a woman standing there in the full light of the kitchen. And she was staring at me with this horrible, evil look, just like, what are you doing in my house? Her chin was even dropped down, and she was just staring at me. And that's the first time that I've ever had an apparition or anything look at me. And it really terrified me. I didn't really know what to do, because I've never really been in that serious of a situation like that. So I just lowered my head back down, and I was just like, you know, trying to come to grips with what was going on. And I didn't want to look again. I just laid there for a long time, my head down, just hoping that she would be gone when I lifted it back up. It seemed like a long time. It probably wasn't. A few minutes. I lifted my head back up. And within 5 minutes, my daughter, Ariane, woke up, and she looked at me very strange. She was like, what's going on? Something, you know, she was startled. She was uneasy. I told her I just couldn't sleep. I didn't tell her till the next day what I saw, because I figured it would probably, she'd be up too. But it seems like that was something totally different than what I've ever experienced before. And
the solidness of it?
The solidness of her, yes.
Because that's like a blending of, that's a crossover. That's like a complete crossover, you know. Where
I can
it goes,
see
just becomes solid.
the heaviness of her clothing, the shine in her hair, the glistening of her eyes, everything. It was just exactly like a full-blown person.
Dylan, you had something. It was a lucid dream that kind of became reality.
Mm-hmm.
Could you discuss that?
Yeah. Well, I had dreamt multiple times that I went to this house. There was some sort of party going on, and I was walking up these stairs, going into a second level house with a balcony. I was walking up, and there was a fight that I had to stop. I mean, it was something that was there. I knew it was a fight. There was some sort of conflict that I had wanted to resolve in the dream, but I never got the chance to finish the dream. I had noticed, though, on my left, when I walked up the stairs, there was a wicker chair. That later on, that's kind of what made me believe it was. I moved to Albuquerque. I guess a few years later, moved to Albuquerque and had met a friend who took me to a party that was in a second-story house with a balcony that looked very similar. I was walking up the stairs when it clicked, and I decided, okay, if there's a wicker chair on my left when I get up the stairs, then I'm gonna know what this is, and it was there. So I decided, okay, so this conflict is gonna go on, and eventually it started to happen. I mean, the party went a little ways, and then there was a fight, or almost a fight, that that friend that I had made was going to be in because he was being belligerently drunk and a little stupid. But the guy standing at the bottom of the stairs, waiting on him to come out to fight him, had just pocketed some brass knuckles, so I felt that it was something I had to stop, and I felt in the dream that was the case as well, that I had to stop whatever it was, and it ended up, not happening. The fight didn't happen, so it worked out. But I mean, it was exactly the same. I mean, it was green. It was green. There were green chairs, and it was a green room.
Did you pop? Did you?
No, didn't have to fight. That was a nice thing.
I'm saving the best for last. The waffle story. I mean, I'm kidding.
Lincoln had got this audio book on tape by this guy Ajashanti. I don't know, it really clicked. What he was saying, he was talking about, it's called spontaneous awakening, and he was talking about just that, how it occurs, and how he suggests we go about seeking this out. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and we were at the Waffle House. It was the middle of the night, and I was kind of in a very broody mood, and I was just thinking along these lines, and I think me and Lincoln were discussing it, and she went up and she went to the bathroom, and I had a thought about, tried to realize the fact that, Jordan's sitting here, looking out the window and viewing all these things, seeing what he's seeing, hearing what he's hearing, experiencing this, but there's something that's looking through Jordan, that's observing this through the mask of Jordan, I guess, or through the means of Jordan. And Lincoln came back, and I asked her if she thought that could be a possibility, just asked her what she thought of the validity of that thought, and she seemed to be cool with that. And I looked back out the window again, and I don't know. It seemed to be that thought spurred it, but I just had this really strange alteration in perception, and it seemed to be beyond what I've observed to be perception so far. Not beyond as in up, it's not like a ladder or leveling up or anything like that. It's just, it was a...
Beyond?
It was, like, I suddenly was what was looking through Jordan, I thought about the possibility that was there, and then I felt that possibility, I realized that possibility, but I didn't do that. It happened. It occurred. And so I was still witnessing Jordan. I could feel that Jordan was very emotionally affected by this. He was, I was...
You were on the extra platform.
I guess so. I was on the extra platform. I was observing myself. I could feel my face changing with emotion, like just kind of the wonder, just really feeling the wonder fully through my body. And I was tearing up, but I also wasn't that. I was watching that happen to something else that I was very personally related to, very connected to. But and anyway, that was the case. And a cool thought I had, I think it was a thought after the fact, but it seemed to totally apply, was that whatever I moved into, or moved out of, I guess might be more appropriate, to that which I moved out of Jordan into, I realized that did not see, and that did not hear, that did not feel the emotions. The emotions were felt through Jordan. The light, the objects were seen through Jordan, and the sounds of the interactions around me were through Jordan. But whatever I had moved into was just observing all that almost in a very personal, second-hand kind of perception. It was real to the whole, the totality of the being, but it was real in two very different ways at the same time. And I don't know, trying to come up with a word, the first word I could really come up with to try and describe what it felt like overall, and just through and through, was satisfaction. It felt like utter satisfaction with the moment that I was in and everything that was occurring around me. Even though Jordan was all topsy-turvy with emotion, still, through the entire experience, was just this absolute deep satisfaction.
Right. What if? Now humor me here.
What if?
Well, what if, at that point, see, you made me lose it.
Just
That's
clarify.
right.
Just
You got
clarify.
stage fright.
Just try to get us back to the. Explain the point real quick. and
Okay.
then Go on.
Okay, well,
What if?
okay, us realizing the whole Brahman thing, realizing that we are not our ego, we are not ourself, and stepping back from that, what if it's really just, you realize that you're just one, but nobody else is that one either. It's just you. You know what I mean?
That could be that's workable.
Now, that being the case...
Bring the universe inside you.
Well, that being the case, whatever you do to them doesn't really matter, alright? You are God, and they are just a figment of you, but they have no meaning whatsoever. I mean, in that scenario,
There is
if
actually-
you realize...
There is no
Sorry,
meaning
Andy.
in a sense.
So you
You're
can
right.
That's a very
do
valid
whatever the
point.
hell you want.
I
So
mean-
what's the point of doing anything
But
that's
you're
supposed
still-
to...
because
What's
you're
the,
still also
what's the point of
yourself.
achieving something that's
Probably create
better?
suffering. Probably create suffering.
You're still also yourself at the same time. So
So
not
it
gonna do
hurts
something-
yourself then.
You're not going to do something outside of your own realm of morals. It doesn't
Okay,
apply.
that makes sense. If
You
it
still
hurts
act
you...
within your
Unless
But
you're a
if they're only-
suicidal god.
Well, if it's like the dream thing. Well, if it's like the dream thing, me hurting a dream person or a dream figment of my imagination doesn't hurt me. It doesn't.
Right,
So
it
that
might be
being the case,
necessary, yeah.
what if
I
that's
think
what it
that's,
is?
partially valid, yeah.
So it doesn't hurt?
From a perspective.
I don't know, man. I'm just thinking.
The way the cactus is the bacon almost, but upside down. It stings the nostrils. I guess that's a dual quote by myself and Dylan Jordan. I'm sorry, Dylan Rogers.
I'm related to Michael.
It's good that we have some ambiguity about your real name.
Right.
But a couple points that I wanted to mention. When you do a diagram of the mound, it's just a real crude drawing I did, and then you look up above it, you'll kind of see what kind of comparison I'm trying to make here. So here, I just hit some effect button. Okay. All right. Here's your mound with the hole in the top. Like at the TNT area, they do have the hole in the top, and you get this tremendous echo in there. And I would imagine that you get that same echo effect with energies of any kind inside of a dome like that. So you got all kinds of. It's like holding the signal longer. Whatever's in there gets reflected back and forth so much longer somehow, or contained. And so, but anyways, I was drawing this, and I remembered that it looks like the serpent mound crop circle that we discovered totally by random synchronicity in 2004. And then the other thing was Dylan was talking about this sipapus, which are holes, and I'm thinking, what if you combine that with a mound? Because there are stories of people digging under the mounds for their rituals. So what happens? You create a circle, basically, in that situation. In a way, symbolically. But yeah, anyway, I guess that's my point. They're opposites of each other. Okay, hold on. Okay, you had a story, a UFO sighting.
Yes. My brother Jordan and I were driving home. Well, I was helping him move from Denver, Colorado, back to Hobbs, New Mexico, where we are really originally from, and we were driving south on a highway, and we were looking at this, what we thought was a star at first, and we were driving in separate vehicles and talking on walkie-talkies to each other, and we noticed that the star was quite large, and it was directly in front of us, and we just kept driving towards it. We noticed that our walkie-talkies started making noises, interference of some sort, in particular times. Then I guess, do you remember if it was just that one, and then we noticed what was ahead of us?
Yeah.
Okay, so we heard one long interference, just the walkie-talkies were freaking out, and we finally got to the point where we could talk, and then we both noticed up ahead of us that star. It seemed larger, it was multicolored, and there were parts that were spinning. One was spinning the bottom. Maybe you can help me out here. So it seemed like almost beams of color. I mean, there weren't a whole lot of them. I mean, it looked like a star, like a large star. But the bottom piece, though elongated, it wasn't like a saucer. It didn't seem like a saucer to me at all. But the bottom piece would spin one way while the top was spinning the other, and it was just.
Was it like this?
Yeah, kind of. Except there was a middle piece too. So something like that.
Now notice the similarity with some of our diagrams here earlier.
Right. It's quite possible. Yeah. No, those pieces were spinning. They were different colors. I believe there was blue.
So this was spinning, and this was spinning in the middle.
Yellow and red. Maybe you can fill in some gaps there, man.
We first noticed it because we were both we're driving two separate vehicles, just a few feet apart, talking on the walkie-talkies. We noticed it around dusk. We saw it was like the brightest spot on the horizon, in the still deep blue, not yet black. And we had driven, I don't know. I mean, it's memory, which is faulty, but I swear it had been at least an hour.
Yeah, it was a while.
And it was still prominent in our field of view, and the rest of the stars seemed to have come up around it, and we'd changed directions at least slightly a few times. So, but it was always right there. And
ahead of us.
It was always at the same level on the horizon. It didn't seem to, I don't know. It was always right there, and it didn't seem to go with the directions very well. It was just always in the same spot on your windshield when you looked over at it. But it looked just like those really twinkly stars in like the wintertime when it's really crystalline up in the atmosphere. They just really shine sharply.
Yeah, really long and sharp.
Yeah, it's a very sharp shine. But it was bigger than all the rest, just a touch. And then we had that, once we noticed this, we were thinking, have you seen that thing? Shouldn't it be moving, progressing across the sky, whatever?
Right.
We both thought that was kind of strange, talking over the walkie-talkies. We then observed it for a little while longer. And then we were passing through, was it
Lovington?
Lovington, right. We were passing through Lovington.
Yeah, I remember this.
And that's when we started to get the interference.
No, that was Clovis. Got the interference in Clovis. By the time we hit Lovington,
oh, it was where it vanished on us.
We didn't see it any further.
Right.
It was nowhere to be found. There was just dead space. There was no stars right there. There was dead space and nothing.
It's cool. The interference was
In
like
the right
tones.
direction.
The interference was like tones, like musical tones, like brr, brr.
Yeah.
It was very solid. It wasn't static at all. It was very specific musical tones. And it just happened for a long moment. We managed to talk to each other. Said, "Did you notice that? It happened a couple more times." It was like that.
Yeah, it's a goofy
really
way to think about it, though. It wasn't that clear. You know what I mean?
Right, but it still sounded like musical tones in a very similar way.
It was strange.
And then we were just driving along, and the buildings. We were driving through a small town, and it seems like I lost it behind the buildings, but we both lost it at the same time. When we left, and we were back in completely flat lands, going in the same direction, it wasn't there anymore.
Yeah.
I forgot one detail. It was reported in the newspaper. We told our parents when we got to their house because that's where we were headed. It was on Christmas Eve, and the newspaper said something about Santa Claus sightings, and then mentioned that a bunch of people had seen this weird star or something in the sky.
That happened back in our day too.
Oh yeah.
The Santa Claus
Nice.
connection somehow.
Really? Yeah.
Okay, here we are at Bandelier National Monument near Los Alamos, where the atomic bomb was developed. They have cliff dwellings here that the Indians lived in. Jordan, what do we see here? This isn't a cliff dwelling.
This is a hole. This is a man-made hole.
Is it a Sipapu?
Maybe. See, I'm thinking the Sipapu might be the little bitty hole in the middle of this bigger hole. That's my expert opinion.
What's the purpose of these holes?
Well, I think it's to remember where they came from. These ancient dwellers of these places. To remember that they came up into a new world from the previous world, which I believe was the third world, which was supposed to be an evil world. So this one's supposed to be a little bit nicer than the last one. I think that little hole right there is supposed to be a symbol of that. And obviously, sign says do not enter, so you don't fall into the evil world. So.
This stone sculpture looks like a seated Garuda. A Garuda in meditation posture. This looks like a face. Due to various camera failures, technical failures, we had to put off our reportage of the seeming ghost fire that we saw at Haunted Hill at the end of Manal in Albuquerque in the foothills, where some caveman was murdering people. So now I'll just start off with what I saw. Sharon and Jordan both were uneasy about a certain area of this huge expanse of foothill, and I walked further beyond and saw that there was a fire in a cave, what seemed to be a cave. We don't know for sure. We've got to check it out again tomorrow, hopefully. So this fire is burning, and then it sort of goes down once we become aware of it, and I'm just waiting for more, on the evidence of whether or not. So let's go to Jordan now and get his account of what happened.
So Andy and Linka picked me up from the hotel, and Linka said she was already feeling something in the air. Like she had called me and said that we were going to head out to this haunted place or whatever. But when she picked me up that night, she was saying she was already feeling something in the air, and I didn't feel it at that point. But we drove and we went to this place up at the foothill of some mountain.
Haunted Hill.
We walked through there, and I started to feel the weirdness in the air. I don't know, maybe I just wanted to, but definitely felt like that. But then as we approached the place, I definitely started feeling that stuff. I don't know, we were just creeping along, listening real close, trying to be quiet and stuff. And it just felt like the air was moving about in a strange way. It didn't, it wasn't like windy. It's just like, you could feel this stuff out here, and every now and again, you just feel something move out there. You could just detect that stuff. It just really felt like that. It felt like being watched as well. Anyway, we can go to her now.
Well, when we first pulled up, we walked a few feet, and I instantly was drawn to the left side of the mountain over there, where it looked like there was just a dark shadow at the bottom. I mean, I hadn't really intentionally focused on the fact that there was a dark shadow over there, and I had no idea it was a cave, or we still don't really know for sure it was a cave. But anyway, that was where it seemed like most of the energy was emanating from. As we walked forward, I did have one strange incident where I had just laid out some bread for an offering, and I heard just kind of it was like the wind kind of just came into my ear in one little spot and was just kind of whoosh, like that, and I looked over to the left, and there was just it was kind of grayish. It was probably about 4 feet tall, maybe 2 or 3 foot wide. Just kind of a misty looking grayish thing, and it just kind of dispersed. So kind of, that was the first indication there, was something going on out there. I was walking behind Jordan, and Andy was further ahead at one point, and Jordan felt like he was getting an intuition that we should maybe not go forward anymore, that there was something warning. And then Andy went on ahead and was signaling to us with his light, so we ventured forward. And it was strange because as soon as we got up to about where Andy was, I could see over in that dark shadow, it looked like orange flickering and this orange glow. And then it kind of got a little bigger, and we thought it looks like a fire. But we never saw the actual fire or flames. It was just the glow and the color of the orange. And we watched it for probably at least 2 or 3 minutes. And then all of a sudden it just vanished. Just like it had been snuffed out. Nothing at all. And we were kind of like, is this like some kind of phantom fire? It was very strange the way it just completely went out, like somebody turned a light switch off. And we were all kind of getting a little spooked by then. About probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 minutes passed, and all of a sudden it was there again. It wasn't quite as strong as it was before, but you could see just a faint flickering, an orange hue. And we thought about pressing forward, but we were a little intimidated by the fact that it was after midnight, and we were hearing a lot of noises around us, and we weren't sure if they might have been animals or elementals. I know there were elementals there, but we thought we'd wait for the daytime to go and check it out and maybe see if we could find actual physical evidence of a fire. And if we didn't, I would say we all 3 witnessed it, so definitely something was there.
Dylan?
Yes.
Thoughts? Any thoughts?
Well, just for the record, I was not there. But
Have you heard about that place? It's the end of Montano? Is that one?
Montano?
Manal.
Oh, Manal.
It's called Haunted Hill.
No, I hadn't heard of that, but there's something about those mountains. There's definitely a lot of great things happen there.
Well, the
There's
story
lot of
there
people
was that a
go out
guy
there and-
killed a bunch of women, dragged them to the cave, and killed them there.
Well, that's okay.
So
I
that's the
didn't know
story
about
behind
that.
it. Yeah, that's the basis of it.
I really don't know what to say.
Dylan is discussing Concretism versus, what was the first one?
Coherentism
Coherent-
versus foundationalism.
Could you
Yeah.
give us a little rundown?
Well, foundationalism, people tend to believe that their belief system is valid, or they can base other beliefs off of particular concrete basic beliefs, meaning that those cannot be denied. As in, I exist, therefore, the things I experience are valid. That kind of stuff. Well, a coherentist believes it's not so much of a linear type of thinking. It's more so an interwoven set of beliefs that it's like a web. Okay, they all work off of each other in that sense, I guess, and it's something that well, it's not particular ones that are important to the whole thing. It's all of it is important to the whole thing. And I guess if you were talking about time not having a past or a future, it just being, it's a constant present, it's a continuous present, though there are no patterns, supposedly. I'm thinking maybe time isn't working necessarily, or experience isn't working necessarily in a linear fashion, but it's working more in an interwoven way. I don't know. It's
Like a basket.
yeah, that's why you can know things before they happen, or remember or that kind of stuff. Repetition in some way or another.
I think that to know something before it happens, I think you'd have to have a pattern. I mean,
I guess.
is that
A pattern,
No,
or
I
it's,
think
is that
so.
too
Kind of
solid?
a pattern
I mean,
to know something's going to happen.
It just feels like if you're going to see something happen, then everything else has to fall into. If you like your dream, you dreamt something happened. It was at least years before it happened. Probably 5 or more, right? Years before that bar situation, or no, excuse me, the balcony where you walk up and you see the people about to fight and you manage to stop that. But it was years. Years had to go by, and for that to actually happen, there had to have been a pattern that led you to that spot, right? So if we go from, if there's no circle, if things don't come back around and repeat on themselves all the time, I don't understand how there could be a pattern.
okay.
Because if it's just totally random all the time, and of course there are things that dictate our personalities and our personas and our egos and like what we believe, where we live and who raises us and the situations we encounter, all of that is like how we're going to react to the world.
Okay.
I feel free will, but I don't know if it's necessarily true.
Didn't you have a theory that combined predestination and free will?
I did. So I'm thinking, possibly at least, that I feel like I can compare it to a video game. I'll maybe explain that. I don't know if that's even the word, but I'll compare it to a video game in the sense that, okay, instead of us being on one particular track or path in life, and say you believe that God knows the future. Maybe it's more so God knows all possibility with the future. It's kind of like a video game in the sense that there is a particular story you're going through. There are particular checkpoints that you have to reach, but under the physics of the game, nature itself, I guess, for this would be you can pick any path you want to reach those checkpoints.
So you're comparing life to a giant program.
In the sense that, but more possibility,
How
more
is it
infinite
not-
possibility.
That's
the thing.
Just by making the program bigger doesn't make free will.
Right,
I mean,
but
it's still determinate.
Look, the game creators create all the possibility. They play it in every way you can do it, right? But you playing the game, you only have to play it once, and you play it the way that you would do it, but you still reach the same goals. That being the case, I think if there's endless possibility in a lot of ways, or maybe a large amount of possibility, then you have a choice in which path you take. It's just if God does know what's going to happen, it's just because it's conscious of all of it.
How fast
at
or
one
how
time.
slow you go through it too.
If the choice is limited, is it really a choice at all? It's
But-
not free will.
But if this is infinite, if existence is infinite and all that kind of stuff is infinite, maybe time or all that kind of thing,
But-
and it never loops. That means it's not within a confined amount of things, and it never goes back to one. Then it is completely infinite, and may never be the same. So there are an infinite amount of possibilities that can happen. Now, granted, outside forces will act on your life and direct you in particular ways. But that doesn't mean that you have one path or one of three paths you have to choose.
I can see that now. I can see that. It's like all the determinism in there, except there's this one little sliver that keeps it random, and the random lasts forever. Things
At
will
least
build themselves
mathematically.
and kill themselves, and they'll experience and they'll die, and experience will continue, and energy keeps flowing. Things will form, things will unform, but it's just okay.
I don't like the feeling.
What do you mean, okay?
Okay.
Now, the one thing about the video game is that in the video game, if you can't jump, then you are limited in that way, right?
Sure.
You're limited by the physics. We're limited by our particular physics and physiologies and nature and all that, and gravity, that kind of thing. That being the case, I think that at least under those confines, there are things that tend to repeat more, as in,
Well, the astrophysicists say that the galaxies kind of seem to form themselves. They're very chaotic, and they manage to work out some sort of like slight harmony within, so that things begin to thrive or whatever, or they exist in a certain way for a certain amount of time. That's, if it were just random chance, they should be destroyed much more often. So they compare that to putting a whole bunch of different colored marbles in a jar, right? If you put layers of marbles, like all reds, and then all greens, and then all blues, and all yellows, and layered those in a jar, and then you just sat there and moved it, they're not going to ever get in any sort of order. They're going to just continue to disassemble the whole time. So scientists, use that very vague metaphor, at least in an article I read, use that to describe the fact that the universe does seem to be ordering itself, at least to some degree, not just completely disassembling as randomness would dictate.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily believe in randomness completely. I mean, I guess there is some randomness, but...
Yeah, how do laws form within just free will?
What do you mean, our laws or
right,
natural
like you
laws?
said, like in a video game, if you can't jump in a certain area, you can't jump. You're limited in your decisions. You still make decisions, and they might be
So
almost
natural
infinite,
laws.
but they're still natural laws. So how do laws form in complete randomness?
The programmer has to make
Free will.
Well, I don't know if it... Well, it's like... Do you mean like... the fact that a large mass in space has a gravity to it?
How do
you
things
mean that?
order themselves if it's just random?
I think it's all playing the game too, man. It's all
Playing the game.
well, it's all within the game's confines. You know what I mean?
Well, who writes the program, though? You know what I mean?
That's
Who
what
guides
I don't
it?
know.
Who guides it? Is it just like separate entities that have just out of random chance actually had grown into something that's aware of things and can guide us in different directions and help us down paths? There is a good way to be, or is it? I mean, can there be? If it's
Well, I think
there has to be a program to write that, right? If there is a good way to be and a bad way to be, and a proper way and a poor way, if there's a way to advance or a way to just stay stagnant.
It's a conscious program.
But I can see, if you look at it, I guess you look at
So
the
it means
huge
it
things,
changes itself?
planets and solar systems, and then you also look at it as small as you get. It does seem to be that there is a particular
There's
pattern.
an order.
Right.
And
How
it
did-
can
where-
adapt too.
where's the
from
order
what-
come from?
It can adapt too. If it's aware, then it can adapt to new circumstances. So that means there would definitely be infinite possibilities.
Where does the order come from, though?
Intelligence.
What grows and learns and changes?
Do you think
You
there's
just wanna
possibly
name
the
God, that's all.
limitation?
I
you
know,
think-
but I don't want to
Humans
use
just
any
wanna
of the
name
cliches
God.
or any of the prejudices.
God is.
Prejudices. I just want to get right down to it and say, what is it? What is the actual force that pushes us around? It seems to order things in some way.
Okay, maybe something here. Do you believe in other dimensions and things, right?
Sure.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking possibly because we don't experience other dimensions so readily. We just understand kind of how it works in ours, for the most part, and maybe not so much dimensional. I just don't think it's necessarily like you travel a certain distance physically and you're to a different kind of possibility. I don't think that's necessarily the case, but dimensional possibilities in the sense that
It's next door, around the corner.
right, it could be existing in the same plane as us,
Yeah.
but for the most part we just don't see it. Because we are limited, do you think we only see one process that seems to work for us, and then every once in a while you gain things that, I mean, think about it. We can't walk through walls.
Of course, sure.
So other things do walk through walls that you've seen. You've seen, you know, right? If you see a ghost and it transcends what we understand to be physical and work in our universe, so possibly it's just because we're limited and we haven't had, we don't have the capabilities of getting to that point and seeing the whole picture. We are in a program, there are many programs, maybe infinite programs, and we are limited, though the whole thing is not necessarily limited. You see what I mean?
If consciousness existed from the very beginning, from the dawn of the universe and before then, if consciousness existed throughout all that, Big Bang, whatever might have actually happened that brought this reality into being, then I can see how there wouldn't even need to be a program. Because if it's already there before all this, then it's guiding this. It could easily be guiding this. But if consciousness is a product of all of this that we are surrounded by and understand and came into being by everything we could possibly ever fathom, then the source of the guidance had to have come from outside before that. I don't know. Is consciousness the force, or is it also dictated by the force? Are situations set up for us to increase in consciousness, or has consciousness always been running through us? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I have no idea.
Let's see, it's June 2009, Santa Clara, California, at the conspiracy convention, which looks like the convention center is built on an old sacred area. Across the street we have a Our Lady of Peace church, a huge Virgin Mary statue, also a convention center mall built on it, the same kind of pattern that we've seen in the past with these old sacred areas. An interesting tidbit here is that the Yahoo headquarters is all around us. We've got several buildings for Yahoo, and one of them is right here right behind the Virgin Mary statue. And as we've discussed in some other interviews and things, Yahoo is the old name for the supernatural creature seen in Seattle by the Indians, and then also was the name for the Australian Bigfoot, which morphed into the Yowie name today, but originally it was a Yahoo name. Who is that masked man? We're here with conspiracy researcher Adam Gorightly. Adam, do you have anything to say about the placement of the Virgin Mary statue on ancient, or the sighting? There must have been a sighting here of Virgin Mary as well.
Undoubtedly.
On ancient Indian land.
I don't know. She looks like a vampire to me, though. She looks spooky.
Let's zoom in on the face there.
That's all I had to say.
Now hold that. Look deeply into the eyes of the Virgin Mary. Moffett Field.
Moffett Boulevard, yes.
Strange hangars. Another strange hangar. It's a mound shape. What are they doing in there?
This is also nasty.
So Carnegie Mellon has a university here, one of their branches, and NASA has a big museum here. And of course you have Cisco. What's the other big company? Yahoo, of course. Silicon Valley.
Knights of Columbus.
Knights of Columbus. It's all here. So one of the things I'll talk about here real quick is that when the convention started, they have these conventions at the Santa Clara Convention Center. They have the Conspiracy Con every year, and they have the UFO. What's it called? UFO something.
Whatever.
All the big names, George Norrie, all your big disinformation agents are there. We had Ted Gunderson at this one. Who else do we have? Or some of the other
Anthony Hilder.
Anthony Hilder, who was involved in the RFK, sort of spinning that, right? Spinning it toward the Rosicrucians, is that right? Mm-hmm. Trying to make that seem like the Rosicrucians did it. By the way, we saw some footage earlier of the Rosicrucian Museum in San Jose. They sort of have this setup going here for some of your big disinformation guys. Usually have defense connections, former FBI, former whatever. But Adam saw his Adam was talking to Roger Tolsay's.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he walked in, he saw Roger Tolsay's, and Tolsay's goes, "So, where's the books?" And Adam's like, "What books?" Well, didn't you want me to bring the books, carry the books in for you or something? And apparently Tolsay's had seen Adam's doppelganger. Then right after that we saw a black squirrel in the parking lot, which Adam's never seen in California before. But apparently this is just a mutation that can occur, melanistic changes in the DNA or whatever. But it's interesting because if this convention center is, and Santa Clara is a hotbed for the black squirrels. So if this was once a sacred Indian area where you had the Virgin Mary sightings, maybe that's the energy. That energy is helping cause these mutations in the animals. Also in this area we have the Air Force Base, Moffett Field. Ken Alton was just telling me last week that he grew up here in San Jose, and his father was stationed at the radar base at Almaden, and that there was some MK Ultra stuff going on there, and they saw UFOs and things. I think I may have mentioned this before, but Stanford
University.
Stanford University's right here. This is all within 5 minutes of each other. Of course, there you have your remote viewing. Really, this is a hotbed of...
That's where all the LSD went through. That's
LSD.
where Garcia and Kesey and those guys were first got turned on to this stuff.
And also we heard yesterday that the girl in the polka dot dress is named Martinez, and a guy showed us a nude picture of her. Ron Patton showed us the picture that he got from Rod McKenzie, who claims to know who the different snipers were. He was some kind of underground former counterintelligence person or something.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a highlight, I guess. Any other highlights think of?
Probably.
We drank some ionized water, some alkalinized coffee. They had ear candles going.
Witchcraft.
Witchcraft. Aura readings, aura photography. Not only aura photography, but aura biofeedback photography, where you change your aura using little whatever mantras or meditations as you have your aura monitored on the screen in front of you. That's kind of interesting.
Bootleg videotapes.
Bootleg videotapes of things.
Ted Gunderson with a contingent of MK Ultra babes.
Lots of women that were way overly dressed for a conspiracy convention. You know, really hot, dressed in, you know, to the nines. Sort of escorting some of these older. Maybe that's the payoff. You know, if you put in your years with the government, you know, you retire, you can get on the lecture circuit, and they have some of these babes around to help you out, make you have a better time, enjoy your time a little more. So, of course, that's what Ab and I are working towards, you know, so we can get on. You know, we're thinking all you got to, you know, we just need to, if we can just get our point of view tolerated long enough, then we might be accepted into the fraternity, MK Ultra fraternity. Mount Diablo, that's where we're headed. Black Panther sightings of late. Full of startling pieces of information. We talked to one guy who looked at my book and the picture of Samudranath, the Garuda shape-shifting monk, and he claims that he's not a real monk. And the other thing was, we learned from a researcher that THC is the cure for everything. Then we saw a piece about a guy named Rick Martin, the wife of the
Nichols.
no.
Who now? Say again?
Anyway, it was the lady whose she married into a family, and the grandfather was named Bert Sparks.
Mm-hmm.
So Bert Sparks, something else.
Why am I thinking it was
Taylor,
Nichols?
Bert Sparks Taylor, supposedly engineered the 1897 airships, worked on them. And did they say who built those, or who was behind them? Anyway, he ended up murdered 20 years later. And then his son became a military something, pilot or something. What was the Lloyd? What was their name? Lloyd?
I got it written down. For some reason, I'm thinking it was Nichols.
Anyway, I was interested in the airship part because we have another clue about this airship stuff, where it holds Tesla, supposedly Tesla technology, some of which was seen over West Virginia at that time. Anyway, that reminded me of the 1111 Independence Avenue story. After John Frick left Youngstown from seeing the Jesus Toast Lady, in November of 2006, 40th anniversary of Mothman, he was getting 000 phone numbers, calls from that number and stuff, and then he saw an MIV van that seemed to be following him with the 1111 license plate. And 1111 was the anniversary date of the Mothman sightings, and also a Masonic date of note, because
84 West.
Jack Parsons,
We're going 84 East, though.
maybe that's what east. So to finish up that 1111 Independence Avenue story, it was November 11th, 2006, Masonic date, Mothman anniversary, MIB van seen by Frick with 1111 license plate. Harriet and John and I were all getting 000 phone calls, and a relative of his dies on that day, and a good friend of his who was going to travel to Point Pleasant with him, his best friend died on 11/11, and then soon after that he got a call from Akron, Ohio on his phone. And he thought, well, that's weird. I was driving through Akron when I saw that Men in Black van. So he looks up, he researches the phone number and finds that it comes from 1111 Independence Avenue, Akron, Ohio. Another 1111. Well, that was it for a while, and then he told me the story, and I looked it up on the map, on the satellite map, and looked at the lay of the land there. I saw that there was a mall next to it called Chapel Hill, and I thought, well, that's a funny name for a mall. Maybe it was a church at one time, a sacred spot. Looked it up, and sure enough, it was once an Indians council circle, and they had named it Chapel Hill to honor the Indians. But then the weird thing is that if you look at the buildings that are built at 1111, from the air, they look like the number 11. There's two building units with a long part and then a base, like two wings at the bottom. So if you flipped it upside down, it looks like a TT. If you look at it the other way from the air, it looks like a 11. Yeah, but he doesn't know who called him from there. But it's like the Indians or something cooked up. The spirit of the Indians cooked up a synchronicity based on 11s. Here we are, folks. Mount Diablo. Mount Diablo has had some strange happenings, of course, as well as supposedly being the central node of the Zodiac Killer's aerial map of killings, ritual killings. Adam and I are hoping to scare up some paranormal forces here, perhaps, and
We're here to bust the case.
We're here to bust the case, and we're thinking if we have a couple hours, we can do it, because most of these cases, you know, there's disinformation folks are the ones researching them, so you never ever do get a resolution. One point I just thought of, since we saw the Virgin Mary earlier, was that I recently read somewhere that, well, it was Patrick Harper, I think, that a robed monk, a male robed monk vision is often seen before the Virgin Mary appears. And that is exactly what happened with Harriet's sighting. And then hers actually went from Virgin Mary into Indian, Native American. And her initial robed monk that she saw seemed, I mean, just the look of it was reminiscent of the Flatwoods monster. So that could be kind of what people saw at the Flatwoods incident, although that incident may have been perhaps rigged or something. Fires. We've heard here at this convention a couple of things. One, which is that, according to Tim Dempsey, whose father works at Alcatraz, during the Native American occupation of Alcatraz, some sort of SEAL team came in and started the fires that actually, you know, were used against the Indians to turn the public against them. And then also the Barker Ranch recently burned down, the house that Manson had stayed at. And Adam has heard from a local that they've seen Navy guys spraying manganese, I believe, around and then setting it on fire, and it really scorches the earth, and it's supposedly to drive out renegade miners and people like that. So it could be that recent Manson fire was simply Navy, because China Lake is right next to it, naval facility where Harriet's aunt was once a civilian commander. Okay, the thing about Disneyland that I wanted to mention was that there's a guy that wrote a book about it called Latitude 33, and how Disneyland was on the 33rd parallel. And what else was there about that?
It's like an energy vortex thing, interdimensional.
Interdimensional vortex over Disneyland?
Yeah.
Was that pretty much it? Is there any? That's it. Okay, well, the guy that wrote it was Walter Bosley, and he got Greg Bishop to go along with it. Bosley's been on the Mothman list, talking about how his dad was counterintelligence Navy, originally his dad. And they moved to, I think it was, and they moved to Mineral Wells right before the Mothman era started. And then we're only 300 yards from where Indrid met Woody Derberger for the first time. And then I guess they moved, and at the time he was very young, but then they moved after Mothman was over. They moved away, and then they came back later for some more action, I guess. And Bosley himself was working for the Air Force Office of Special Investigations. Was he retired FBI too? Yeah, retired FBI. So we're trying to get Harry to do a psychic reading of Bosley to see whether or not he's legit. And she's already saying that she doesn't think that there's a real connection, Indrid. What does that mean, though? You know, Indrid. I mean, one would think if he was a disinformation agent, or his dad was, it actually would be some connection to Indrid. So who knows? It's a rabbit hole. Rabbit hole. Okay, here's a nice little detail about jabbings, cancer jabbings, which I've talked about many times. So Bosley mentioned on a radio interview, is that right?
Yeah.
With Bishop, that they would, one method for getting rid of whatever, who were they using those on?
He didn't get into it, he just mentioned the device.
A device where you have a pin sticking out of a seat with fast-acting cancer, or is it radiation in Bosley's case?
Cancer, when I asked him about it, well, how do you know about this, Walter? He kind of did one of those chuckle type things.
Okay. So it was something that causes cancer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Needle.
They
put in somebody's seat, like.
Yeah, you put it in like their car seat, or they get, and that's exactly what happened to my dad. He first got cancer on his leg down there where you would sit, and then later got the jab. Sorry about that. Later got the jab in the back. But one of the rumors floating around, supposedly Gordon Novell of JFK fame, who was in the Columbus area now. Remember, he went to Columbus, fled to Columbus when Garrison sort of came after him, which puts him in the area where we all lived. Novell claimed that he, or joked or something, to the effect that he had something to do with Mae Brussel getting cancer. You know, to sort of get her out of the scene or whatever.
My source claimed it was one of those needle devices.
Oh, and it was claimed by a source that was a needle that was used on her. And what was the other thing?
I don't know.
Oh, the orb, the researcher Talavesk. What's his first name? Richard? Or is he secret?
He's secret.
He's completely secret.
This part isn't secret.
Right. Richard, though, right? Richard Talavesk?
Cal.
Cal?
T-A-L.
No, his first name.
That's his first name.
Tal
Levesque.
Tal Levesque. Okay, that's his first name's Tal. Said that his first, he got onto the reptilian agenda. God. Boys there, sorry. Reptilian agenda by having an orb encounter where an orb imparted knowledge to him, and he felt, and how that translates to reptilians I don't know, because I don't think it does necessarily. But we also heard from Douglas Hawes about this theory that underneath, what's that point called?
I think it's
Rattlesnake Point in California. There's a legend that it was a Masonic spot or something.
Well,
pyramid. There was a pyramid.
It was a UFO landing.
UFO landing area.
Yeah.
Underneath of which, deep in the ground, in old mines, were found these balls that are supposedly hundreds of thousands of years old. They're perfectly spherical metal balls. Are they metal or they're not gold? But it sounds like the ball that fell in Ripley during the Mothman era. And maybe it's the thing that the Garuda carries or somehow symbolizes, or the thing that Johnny Sands, the Las Vegas singer who was accosted by someone who sounds like David Ferry, all this is years after Ferry supposedly died, which he may not have, because he sounds like the same MIB at the Herbert Hopkins UFO situation in the late 70s. So I'm assuming Ferry didn't die. He stuck around, and we keep hearing all these tales about a man in black with no hair and all these attributes that sound like Ferry. But there was a ball held in front of Johnny Sands which hypnotized him. Maybe this ball that fell in Ripley that was coated with gold was one of these older balls that had been found in the mine there and covered with gold for some reason. Maybe they have some strange magnetic properties that can either hypnotize someone or be used in some weapon. Because I know the Nazi Bell weapon had 4 spherical balls that were placed in there that would spin, and you would heat them to a great degree using heated mercury. And I guess this ball that fell in Ripley was tested quite a bit with a really high heat, and it didn't hurt it. So it was obviously something made to withstand high temperatures like that found in a scalar weapon. Anything else we missed there? Well, we're wondering if the new footage of the guy in Dealey Plaza who looks like Oswald could perhaps be Kerry Thornley. And so on and so forth. One note there, Tal Levesque also goes by Jason Bishop III. And it's interesting because his name has the same phonetic kind of flow as Terrorist. Terrorist, supposedly the name of Indrid Cold's buddy. Got that from Alan Greenfield. And then I think I mentioned in the new book coming out, Mothman 4, that Terrorist is also could be a reference to the tearing of the wrists, because it came up, the tearing of the wrist has come up in certain, I think at UFO incidents. Does that ring a bell with you? The tearing of the, I have to remember what that refers to, but it is something in the paranormal world, the tearing of the wrist. Earlier Adam was telling a Spanish joke. What was that joke anyway? It was Virga.
About Art Bell and the
Art Bell, yes. Somebody called in and said they had a Virga sucker. It wasn't goat sucker. It was a Virga.
I think it was Virga Cabra.
Virga Cabra, which translates as penis cabra or penis sucker. But if penis is spelled like that, it's very similar to the word virgin, and that makes sense. You know, virgin would be someone, I guess, without not having had penis, being associated with penis. But what if the word virgin was applied to Virgin Mary in an incorrect way? What if the Virga part of Virgin Mary, which was originally referred to the fact that the entity seen started off as being male, which is what we typically hear, you know, robed monk, changes into female robed figure? What if the original name of it was the Virga Mary, or something like that? Then that would, it almost could point to really what the church was trying to do with their overall sort of spin on the paranormal, was to make the sighting of a male-female entity into something having to do with an immaculate conception, which maybe is completely irrelevant to this process. So it's one day later, and last night we met with Louise Lacey, and she was saying that she went to Sedona, Arizona to a power spot. She's a plant expert. She found that at the top of this power spot there were 11 different types of plants, and that each plant had 2. 11 and 11. We're looking for a power spot in Morgan territory, which is on the east side of Diablo. Now, Adam and I decided to go to Diablo yesterday on our own. And it turns out that Louise, who had already planned to take us to a power spot but hadn't told us where it was also taking us to Diablo on the east side where Morgan, a Moor word, is located. Apparently it was an old Indian spot. Again, we have the Moor name and the Indians coming together. Another thing Louise said about the Morgan territory here, the runways, they're called, is that black cowboys like to come here. Which again gets back to the Moorish connection. Perhaps that's been passed down in lore somehow so that the black cowboys know that they should still come back here.
Sounds like a stretch.
It always does.
Why don't you let me read it?
Oh, well, I already got it going. Morgan territory is located within the traditional homeland of the Volvan. Reminds me of that language Volapük, which was supposed to be a universal language. Volvan were one of 5 Native American nations in the Diablo area who spoke dialects of the Bay Miwok language. Their way of life was characterized by a rich heritage of social, political, economic, and religious tradition built upon thousands of years of living with the land, during which new ideas, technologies, and Indian groups came into the area. The world changed dramatically after 1772, when the Spanish began to explore the East Bay. Diseases of European origin killed large numbers of people. The Volvan were among the Native American groups who resisted Spanish missionization, but by 1806 the resistance had crumbled.
35 years. 2 generations.
Morgan territory is named for Jeremiah Morgan, who was born in 1818 on the banks of the Tennessee River in Alabama. They came over by ox draw and wagon in 1849. After a brief stint as a gold miner, Morgan left California for Iowa, only to return with his family in 1853. In 1857, he started a ranch in the area that we know as Morgan Territory. The name of Mount Diablo was Tuyshtaq, Tuyshtaq, was the sacred birthplace of the world. Supernatural beings. The first people lived here. First people are often designated with the names of the animals whose attributes are reflected in their personalities. Animals such as condor, which would be Moloch. There we go. We know Moloch, Bohemian Grove. Prairie falcon, eagle, and coyote. Woohoo! Moloch. He's back. Okay, now we're on top of Grizzly Peak, San Francisco, where we have some ancient walls supposedly up here. No one knows who built, so forth. Interestingly though, you can see from up here Diablo, which, by the way, the Altamont concert where the Rolling Stones played Sympathy for the Devil and that guy was murdered, some say ritually, is very close to Diablo, at the Lime Ridge open area. And there's Diablo in the distance. Let's get a zoom in on it. Couple of conspiracy rumors sort of in the community, the research community. It's a Joseph Matheny who cooked up the Young's hat sort of story about Fort Dix and Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Also was sort of cooking up some Montauk stuff, and the John Titor time traveler guy, Matheny, was sort of behind that. And also that a group of disinformationists helped Bill Cooper cook up his whole thing. Okay, that is the Mystery Man in Dealey Plaza at the end of the Hughes film. Hughes filmed the shot of the motorcade from that other angle where it makes the turn, and then Hughes followed the crowd after the shooting across the grassy knoll and got that little clip there. This guy in the film walks toward the boxcars and turns around like, oh well, there's nothing here to look for, or like he'd seen something, decided that was all he needed to see, whereas other people are still looking for the shooters. And so, I guess based on synchronicities last weekend at the Conspiracy Con, I'm thinking that might be Kerry Thornley in the video, or another one of the Oswald lookalikes who are in Oswald's Marine unit called the Max 9 unit, because there were apparently four or five guys that all looked alike. And then we've got another image here that was taken during the Conspiracy Con last weekend when Adam and I ran into that squirrel that caught our eye as being very unusual. So we'll get that one queued up and move forward. So here's the article called Black Squirrels and Doppelgangers at Conspiracy Con 9 by Adam. At the beginning of the article, Adam writes about Roger Tulse seeing his doppelganger. But then afterwards, I looked up Tulsis and found that he worked for Howard Hughes at one time. And the Hughes film is the name of the film with the doppelganger at Dealey Plaza. And I'm thinking that perhaps Adam has been drawn to write about Thornley and been drawn to experience doppelgangers, or other people's experiencing his doppelganger, as an indication that he's looking for a discovery here. He's searching after something important, and sort of being guided like the mystical or mythical hero toward finding out that information, and this may be part of how that unfolds. This is Roger Tulse and his wife, and Roger's the one who saw Adam's doppelganger, right before we saw the black squirrel and the man in white hiding behind the black squirrel, which I'll show you now. Okay, here's the shot of the man in white behind the tennis fence there and the squirrel. Because of the doppelganger, symbology that came up first in the synchronicity, line of synchronicities. We had to think about doppelgangers all the way through, I think, in order to symbolically decipher it. So, who is the man behind the fence? Is he a doppelganger? Does he have a doppelganger? Is he one of the guys involved with Thornley? Those are the kinds of questions you can ask. Okay, here's a shot of Thornley on the left with Oswald on the right, and you can see that they look alike. And it's kind of hard to tell from the quality of video that we're showing here, but there is a resemblance between the guy in the used film in Dealey Plaza and Thornley. Perhaps a little stuff on the nose, maybe to make it look a little thicker or something, but the brow is the same, and the hair can always be adapted and changed a little bit, hairline and so forth. Here's an article proving, and just showing that Thornley wrote about Oswald before the assassination. Thornley admits that he was coming up with scenarios for the JFK assassination, admits that he hated JFK, and it also admits that somebody he thinks was E. Howard Hunt was monitoring his book about a fictional Oswald being a communist and so forth. And Thornley even claims that he told E. Howard Hunt, well, just a week before the assassination, just make it a communist, pin the whole thing on a communist lone gunman. So it seems as if the CIA was using Thornley as their guide for how to lay out the second cover story about the assassination. The first one was going to be the Cubans, so they must have been mulling over these scenarios and decided on the lone gunman communist. So the question is, why was E. Howard Hunt confiding so much in Thornley about this? And can Thornley really be an innocent player in all this? One wonders. Okay, next we're going to talk to Ken Alton, our old friend, who we had last time he looked at some photos of Woodward Drive and was able to give me sort of a clairvoyant tarot-like analysis of it, which proved to be true in certain ways, symbolically and otherwise. So we're going to get his opinion on this black squirrel photo and some other things. He's also had some strange things happening in his own life recently, including an encounter with the little furry pugwidgies, which I dreamt about while staying at Tommy's house in 1967. Kenny this just recently happened, where he had a, quote, dream and remembers these little fuzzy beings. Now that wouldn't be that, these kind of dreamy things are hard to pin anything on, but in this case, Kenny, this is also backed up by Kenny was living with a married woman at the time. He had a child or 2 kids, and one of the boys said that the UFOs had come that night, so the next morning or whatever. I'll let him tell the story, but this boy saw a UFO, and it was a seemingly real event. Kenny's also had some other things going on. He has a strange scar, and some doppelganger incidents of his own, which may shed light on this whole doppelganger phenomena. The person that Kenny was living with at the time of that encounter was a rainbow girl earlier in her life, and here's the website for it.
No, this is the Wikipedia one. Let me see if I find.
But this is like a pseudo-Masonic or straight-up Masonic order for girls to teach them obedience and how to behave around, I don't know, how to behave, I guess. And was it your feeling that this might be, there might be some mind control going on with that?
I do feel there's some mind control. It came up when I was watching Eyes Wide Shut, and I said I didn't understand it, and I was a big Kubrick fan, and then my brother happened to mention, goes, well, it's all Masonic and imagery, and it's all about, mind control, and I was just like, and then it made sense to me, and then I was like trying to figure out what all the rainbow symbolism was. And
okay, this is the scar that Kenny got on his body. It was where he would hug her and that they would touch.
The situation with the scar happened. I was involved with this woman who lived near me, very close to me, and but we had separate places, and she had 2 children, and I was one night, you know, she was sleeping in her place, I was sleeping in my place, and I had these crazy, what I thought were dreams of these little furry creatures wandering around my room and kind of not really hurting me, but kind of messing with me, and they'd be up in the corner of my room, bedroom, like top between, you know, where the walls and the ceiling would cross, and I remember lying on my face looking over, like just on the plane of my bed, and seeing their little heads, seeing a little head peek over the bed looking at me.
Are you saying they could levitate?
Yeah, it was up, they were up in the corners, and you know, like the foot of my bed, and I would see them, like, and I, you know, I was asleep, or I thought I was asleep, or some form of subconsciousness, and I remember like kind of like trying to tell them I couldn't speak verbally, like I wasn't able to wake up, or I wasn't able to physically do, but I was mentally trying to say, hey, you know, just leave me alone, stop messing with me, and I didn't feel like a threat, and I woke up, and this woman came and visited me in the morning, and I said, yeah, I had these strange dreams, and told him about these little creatures, and she said, well, her son had crawled into bed with her and said that there was these creatures that were poking at his feet and hurting his legs. It was hurting his legs and poking his feet like needles, and it really hurt. And he got kind of wigged out and came into her bed. And
was this in the same house you were living in?
It's one.
His experience was in the same location.
Exact same location, pretty much. Is, you know, like kind of a wall separating our 2 apartments, and she remembers him looking out the window, and she was like, you know, half asleep. This is really early in the morning, and saying that there's the UFO flying away, talking about the UFO flying away. And so as I go over there and I ask him these, you know, questions, it's like, oh, this is just weird, you know, too much of a coincidence to be, and, you know, I get his version of it. And then all of a sudden, like maybe not too long after that, I don't know, a week or something, like, I noticed a scar that I had no, I mean, I was doing carpentry at the time, and I'd get cuts, and mostly in my hands and stuff, but I always know what happened. You know, you get hurt, but I had no idea where this came from, and we joked about it being, you know, from the UFO encounter, and then all of a sudden, this woman, she was getting it, not like in where I had it, but like if she was standing opposite me, she would get it in the exact same spot, as if, you know, when we're touching intimately, it would be, you know,
Energy transfer.
And I spoke with her recently, and she says it's gone now. Now that we're not, so I don't know what that is.
Well, you and I have had a lot of experiences that seem to be similar. Like, for instance, I had a quote dream about those Puckwidgies when I was a kid during the Mothman era. Actually, at Tommy's house, when he claimed it was Mothman outside organizing the whole thing. So, but another experience that you and I have had was the what was that? Oh, well, you were talking about your doppelganger incidents, and you can talk about those in a sec. But the first one I want to talk about is the one where you got hit at a show, and it happened to be the show of the band that I used to be in.
Before I knew you.
Before
I even knew Andy and knew that he was in this band.
Right. And a lot of people, as I mentioned in our first clip that you and I did, a lot of people think we're the same person. They'll mistake you for me, and it's just so bizarre because
physically
so different in size and stuff. But it's almost like, you know, with this Puckwidgie thing, we're experiencing the same kinds of archetypal things, and maybe
like energetic doppelganger or something.
Yeah, like you were, because I actually had an incident like that. In other words, you just got punched by somebody out of nowhere. basically. And that's happened to me when I was in Ed Hall. I was attacked by a guy because, and the only thing I could think was that he was upset that I had changed from a terrorist outfit to an oil executive outfit. But it's like you're getting replays of things that I've had happen. I don't know why. That's almost like a doppelganger effect.
Yeah, but I was mistaken when I was watching this band, and I had no idea. Like, I just kind of started backing up, and I just was cold cock. I had no idea. I didn't even know I got hit. I just had no clue. I was so shocked that I didn't even know what happened to me. And then I just realized, like, blood was coming out of my nose, and then I don't even know who this guy was. It came up behind me. He's like, "Hey, that guy just hit you. He's running out the door right now." So I went chasing after him. Once I realized I got tagged, I was like, furious, and I started chasing after him, and I run him down, and I grab him, and he turns around, and he was like, "Oh, sorry, I thought you were somebody else." And at that point, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't, it's like, like I was so confused. I mean, I was still kind of dazed from getting just cold cocked, and then like.
I'm glad you got cold cocked instead of me, because he probably thought it was me.
I'm glad I could help you out there. So,
but
can I tag you now and to deliver it? Finally?
I guess, yeah, off camera. I don't want to. But you've been mistaken for somebody else in the acting business, right?
Yeah, people would come up to me and say that they had seen me in this play, and I go, "Oh," and I'd ask them when I'd go run through everything I had done, and they go, "No, it was this other play," and I go, "Well, I wasn't in that," and they go, "No, I'm pretty sure you were," and was very complimentary, and this had happened quite a few times, and then I ended up like running into somebody who had seen us both, like had seen a play that I was in and seen a play that this guy was in, and could never remember the name of, but had met us both in a way, and had like said, "Wow, there's," so that got to be really weird. Like there's some, and we, it's not like Seattle acting community is that large. It's not, I always figured I'd eventually run into this guy at an audition or something, and I never did.
So it turns out there's a boys' side of this Rainbow Girls, and it's Demo Lay, which, was at my high school, and nobody really quite knew. We had heard about it. We knew that there was a club that existed, but it was mostly the guys that you would think about who probably will want to run for political office later. That was their club, and so wealthy, usually kids, lawyers, families, and things. But when it came time for Pictures Day, I always jumped in the Demo Lay picture. But apparently this woman's grandfather was a high-level Mason who was involved in bone grave robbing. So, and the cover story is kind of probably that it was just going after trinkets and things, but maybe it has to do with this whole bone thing, digging up bones, either because of something that's in them, like white gold, or occultum, or for ritual purposes. Okay, we are here in Tukwila, Washington, near Seattle. I just found out today that there's a mound here called the Grand Mound. Let's get a shot of it. It's right at the end of Boeing Field, the south end of Boeing Field, right next to the Duwamish here, the Sacred Indians River. One imagines that there were probably lots of these mounds. Actually, there's a bigger part of the mound over here. Look at this. Over there. They claim that there weren't any other ones and that this is the only one that survived the Ice Age, but I would be skeptical of that. This is supposedly the center of the world, according to the Northwest Indians, or at least the ones in the Seattle area. So it's a highly sacred mound, and it's right in the middle of a wasteland, industrial wasteland. Basically, we've got some storage facilities, and I guess they've been wanting to develop this for a long time, but what's holding them back, do you know?
The city of Tukwila, it's hard for them to get permits to dynamite it.
They want to dynamite it. God. What? Is there something up there?
No.
So I thought this would be a good spot, Kenny, to ask you your opinion about the Men in Black, the Man in White photo from last weekend at the conspiracy convention, and that whole thing, the whole thing with the doppelganger, Gorightly's doppelganger. Is it? I mean, do you have any thoughts at all about that?
I mean, it's hard to look into that that picture. I mean, I don't.
Okay.
It seemed strange that this guy's just standing there in a tennis court, like staring out. Like he wasn't like doing anything. He wasn't like whoever looks out at a tennis court, they're always like either standing, waiting, looking to actually play, but I don't know. I mean, we talked about the doppelganger thing earlier on.
Can you talk a little bit more about this thing you were saying? You were just telling me a story about how you studied acting with, and I guess dated a woman whose mother was a Rockefeller.
Her stepmother was.
Her stepmother was a Rockefeller, and this woman actually helped you. The Rockefeller helped you heal yourself and learn certain techniques that sound a lot like some of the techniques that they're using now in matrix energetics and body talk and things like. But this was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, this is probably 94 maybe. 93, 94. I just told Andy a long story. I had this woman I was in a play. I was doing the play musical Hair, and she actually played my girlfriend in the musical. I did not get along with her at all when we were doing the musical, but her father had taken a liking to me and had did the kind of do the right thing, or kind of got me into thinking about alternative spirituality and men's retreats and rites of passages, and he'd always talk about rites of passages and stuff like that, and he would say that for him, if he didn't know any better, but he thought that his rites of passage was if he went to Vietnam, and he did 3 tours of Vietnam, and
And didn't you say that after he died, you had a series of dreams in which you felt like he was talking to you and perhaps getting you to be interested more in her?
Yeah.
And then you also feel like you experienced, like I was saying, with me, with some of the things that have happened to me, they seem to happen to you again, as if you're re-experiencing something that I've experienced. And so maybe you were saying that you had dreams where you experienced something that may have happened to him in Vietnam.
Yeah. It was so vivid. It was like this epic dream of being, he had done 3 tours of Vietnam, and he even was able to, in poetry form, kind of describe his death, his eventual death, where he had a rare form of leukemia, a very rare form of leukemia, and he had this hemorrhaging, and he had died just all of a sudden. It was just like all of a sudden, but he was always. But I had, after he died, and I had this dream about this experience in Vietnam, this really epic. I was maybe I was Jack in the dream, and he had the, I got set up, and and he had known something about that there was some misguided stuff. In the dream, there's these guys that were military personnel, but they're all in civvies. They were all in brown dress slacks and white short sleeve shirts. But I knew, or the dream Kenny knew, or the dream guy, his father knew that I was, that these guys were kind of doing some dealings that they shouldn't be, using military transport planes to transport stuff, and but I got set up by my commanding officer to be ambushed by a Viet Cong. And
sounds like he was in a Phoenix unit, because they did their drug dealing.
I don't know,
the assassins and counterintelligence.
And he spent a lot of his time, a lot of work trying to deal with all that, his experiences in Vietnam. And he died. I ended up becoming this woman I became her girlfriend, and we got close after he died. And he was very interested in me. Like when he'd come see Hellier, he'd always be like, he wanted to know, he wanted to talk to me, he had this thing about me, and saw something in me. And after he died, I had he had done some things, like I had broken my hand, I had punched a wall, Andrea and I got in a fight, and I had punched a wall, and I felt like somebody or he had taken my hand and thrown it. I'm not absolving myself from my idiocracy.
Mm-hmm. But you were a cipher.
Yeah, and I was definitely angry, but I'm not the kind of person that does that, and it was it's like one of those moments, like when I got mauled by a dog in Thailand, and this was another one of those moments where I'm very appreciative. It made me, grow. It was like I went through the fire, or whatever you want to call it, and I broken my hand, and I decided not to use any painkillers. I wanted to experience the feeling. And Jack, or Andrea's stepmother, who taught me how to heal quickly, and rebuild my hand through meditative processes, and I ended up going to the hospital, and I had another month and a half before they were expecting me to be able to take out the cast, and the doctor was just totally taken aback that I had healed really quickly when he was looking at the x-rays. And so they actually took off my cast right there and then. He's like, wow, you heal really quickly. And it was a lot of that kind of process that I was going through. I thought it was also because I didn't drown myself in painkillers, and I didn't, though it hurt like nothing else in this world. These two fingers are all the way down here, and the whole experience was just rites of passage that he would talk about, that you have to go through these rites of passages. But he also had these he would actually come into my dreams, and he would I would wake up, and he would basically dictate this letter that he wanted me to give to his daughters. And I would just be I'd have to go to the underworld, and I would see him, and I had my child Kenny was there, and I would go through this maze, and everybody was kind of, and I'd find him, and I'd see him, and and he would look, you gotta be really low key about this, because you're not supposed to be here. And they find that you're here, then they'll try and take my energy or take my soul, because they're starving, they're stuck there. And he told me to tell his daughter that he needed her to let go of him, because he's trying to move on to somewhere else, and she's holding him back, and she needs to figure out how to let him go. And then somebody had identified me, all these dead souls. It was really creepy, and they were all kind of ghostly and lost. Because we don't have elders, or we don't have teachers, we don't have gurus in this culture. We don't have somebody. Balls of light. Balls of light. Alcohol, TV. Balls of light.
Balls of light.
We do a lot of drugs. We drink a lot of alcohol. Opiates focus that energy. Paranormal experiences.
So much Mothman activity.
Paranormal experiences. Balls of light.
Balls of light.
If you want to see them as angels, you'll see them as angels. If you want to see them as aliens, you'll see them as aliens. Watch TV. Yeah, it's energy. Round purple balls of light. We do a lot of drugs. Energy. Watch TV.
Balls of light.
Yoga, or through meditation. Alcohol or TV. Yoga, or through meditation. Focus that energy. Yoga, or through meditation. Alcohol or TV. Yoga, or through meditation. Balls of light.
Balls of light. Part of a nationwide occult group.
Killing each other left and right.
activity.
Watch TV. Yeah, it's energy.
A nationwide occult group.
The battle of good and evil.
6 years after the Mothman.
Watch TV.
Balls of light. He pulled one of the key Mothman experiencers out of her. He tried to pull her into his car.
Paranormal experiences. Round purple balls of light.
So much Mothman activity.
Round purple energy. Balls of light.
Balls of light.
If you want to see them as angels, you'll see them as angels. If you want to see them as aliens, you'll see them as aliens. Focus that energy. The battle of good and evil. Paranormal experiences. The battle of good and evil. Watch TV.
Balls of light.
The most important question is whether you perceive the world as one of good or one of evil.